Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. US President Donald Trump imposed a new 10% tariff on imports from nearly all countries in response to a Supreme Court ruling. The UK government is considering legislation to remove Andrew Mountbatten Windsor from the royal succession. Trump considers a limited military strike on Iran if it fails to curb its nuclear program. The US Supreme Court has struck down key tariffs imposed by Donald Trump on Friday, ruling he overstepped his authority. In response, the administration is pressing ahead with a new 10% global tariff, keeping trade tensions in focus.
US President Donald Trump has quickly responded to a Supreme Court ruling by imposing a new 10% tariff on imports from nearly all countries. The new duties will apply for up to 150 days, with exemptions for energy products, certain minerals, pharmaceuticals, and goods covered by existing trade agreements. Trump issued a proclamation to enforce them, using a law that allows tariffs up to 15%. However, the move may face legal challenges, creating more uncertainty in global markets. The decision follows the court's rejection of Trump's use of emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs, ruling that he had exceeded his constitutional authority. In a 6-3 ruling, the court determined that Trump's use of the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act to set broad tariffs was unconstitutional, as Congress had not authorized such sweeping powers. This decision is seen as a significant victory for US businesses and states that had challenged the tariffs, potentially opening the door for billions of dollars in refunds. Speaking at the White House, Trump called the decision terrible and insisted that his administration would continue to impose tariffs using other trade laws aimed at supporting US manufacturing.
Well, we're going straight ahead with 10% straight across the board, which was the absolute right to do. And that's taking place. That's a lot of money coming into our country. And then during that period of about 5 months, we are doing the various investigations necessary to put fair tariffs or tariffs, period, on other countries.
Despite the administration's claims that the tariffs will boost revenue and US industry, analysts warn that the ruling, along with Trump's swift response, has added fresh uncertainty to global markets.
The UK government is considering legislation to remove Andrew Mountbatten Windsor from the royal succession, a move supported by Defence Minister Luke Pollard. This comes after scrutiny over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and a recent arrest on suspicion of misconduct. The legislation would prevent Andrew, currently 8th in line to the throne, from ever becoming king. It's expected to be introduced after the police investigation concludes. Buckingham Palace has yet to comment on the proposal. The fallout continues after the arrest of King Charles' younger brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Police searches are ongoing, while reactions from the palace, the United States and the public continue to pour in.
Police remain outside Royal Lodge in Windsor as searches continue following the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The 66-year-old was detained on Thursday morning, his birthday, and questioned for around 11 hours. Thames Valley Police later confirmed he was released under investigation. He has not been charged and denies wrongdoing. King Charles, who was not informed in advance, said the law must take its course and pledged the royal family's full cooperation. The case has drawn international reaction. US President Donald Trump called it damaging for the monarchy.
It's a very, very sad, to me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing to see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing.
At the United Nations, spokesperson Stefan Dujarric declined to comment directly, but called for stronger investigations into abuse linked to Epstein. For the family of Virginia Giuffre, who accused Andrew of sexual abuse in a lawsuit settled in 2022 and died by suicide last year, the arrest brought emotion and a sense of justice.
This is where the house of cards starts falling. And, kudos to the UK for taking the first step, for saying, you know what, we are going to arrest somebody who is held to one of the highest esteems out there, somebody who was a former prince. I mean, this hasn't been done before. And so to know what we should expect, it's really naive to say that we do, but we won't stop. I mean, Virginia said it so clearly in her statements, and I'll say it again here today, we won't stop until justice is served.
Across Britain and Europe, newspapers led with a striking image of Andrew slumped in the back of a crossover as he left the police station. Several front pages described an unprecedented moment for the monarchy. Public reaction ranged from shock to relief.
I didn't think so, no. I thought he'd go into hiding and get away with it. Yeah, so, no, that's all I've got to say, really. I'm pleased.
But the prince, I mean, that's wild. I think people are gonna really be, that affects a whole country, him being on that list. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
The investigation centres on allegations that while serving as the UK's Special Representative for Trade and Investment, he shared confidential government documents with Jeffrey Epstein. Newly released US files suggest he forwarded reports on countries including Vietnam and Singapore. Andrew stepped back from public duties in 2019 over his links to Epstein and resigned as trade envoy in 2011. It is the first arrest of a senior royal in modern times.
Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said that Budapest will block the €90 billion EU loan to Ukraine until oil transit to Hungary via the Druzhba pipeline is restored. He stated that Ukraine is blocking the pipeline and violating the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. Hungary will not give in to this blackmail, will not support the war, and will not allow funds to be taken out of the country. On the 11th of February, the European Parliament approved the €90 billion loan package for Ukraine for 2026 to 2027. Clashes erupted in Tirana on Friday as police used tear gas and water cannon against opposition protesters demanding the resignation of Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama. The protest was sparked by corruption allegations against Deputy Prime Minister Belinda Baluku, accused of influencing public tenders. Baluku has been suspended from office by an anti-corruption court, but the Special Prosecution Office has called for Parliament to lift her immunity to allow for her arrest. Despite these tensions, Rama's Socialist Party holds a strong parliamentary majority, making it unclear when or if Baluku's immunity will be lifted. Albania aims to join the European Union by 2030, but the EU says more action is needed to tackle corruption and crime. With tensions rising over Iran's nuclear program, President Trump has warned he may order a limited military strike to pressure Tehran. Meanwhile, Iranian officials say they're preparing a draft proposal to present to US negotiators in the coming days.
US President Donald Trump said on Friday that he is considering a limited military strike on Iran to pressure its leaders into agreeing to a deal that would curb the country's nuclear program. Trump warned that Iran must negotiate a fair deal and suggested that failure to do so could lead to military action.
They better negotiate a fair deal. They better negotiate. You know, the people of Iran are a lot different than the leaders of Iran. And it's very, very sad situation.
These remarks came after Trump indicated on Thursday that the world would know within the next 10 days whether a deal would be reached or if military action would be taken. The US has significantly increased its military presence in the region, with the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest warship, and the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier now heading towards the area. Despite rising tensions, US and Iranian officials have been meeting in Switzerland, and Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed on Friday that a draft of a possible agreement will be handed over to US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in the coming days. Analysts are warning that the combination of stalled nuclear talks and the growing military presence has heightened the risk of a broader conflict in the Middle East, keeping the region on high alert.
The United States has reportedly informed the White House that its armed forces are prepared to strike Iran this weekend, though President Trump has not yet made a decision. The US military presence in the Middle East is now said to be the largest since the Iraq War, while Iran and Russia conduct joint naval drills in nearby waters. We examine whether this is strategic deterrence or a slide toward confrontation. Let's bring in our guest, Enrique Cosero, political analyst from Madrid, Spain. Enrique, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, does this scale of US military build-up point to imminent action, or is it a kind of measured deterrence to force diplomatic concessions?
It looks like right now that is a deterrence, and we have to consider that in any case of any threat, the first thing we just put on the table is going to be a reputation. If the United States is deploying 2 carriers as the Ford and Lincoln in order to threat Iran for imminent attack and an imminent strike, and they not only need, they even not need the carriers. They can deploy the B-2 bombers from Missouri, and that those bombers don't land in any other place than in their own base. So it's just a question of just showing up in the Mediterranean, in the Gulf, and saying to Iran, "I'm here. I'm gonna push you harder in order to reach an agreement, and otherwise we can strike." And if we want to take some precedent, that precedent will be the 12 days war that Israel were fighting against Iran with very precise strikes, and it's not going to be the first time that Iran is going to face that sort of attack. But right now, I think, and because so we can call it a standard, it's a deterrence.
Okay. And Iran and Russia are holding joint naval drills at the same time, and that adds symbolism. Is this coordinated signaling to Washington or routine military management by timing?
Those kind of coordinated maneuvers and drills and exercises are always done with they're always made public if you want to show some sort of strength. So it's not what a coincidence we are having these maneuvers this joint maneuvers on the field. Is Iran telling that I'm supporting Russia with weaponry and with resources, and Russia is willing or is showing to some will of defend Iran. Said this, that this doesn't mean that Russia is gonna put a boot on the place in order to defend Iran. It's some sort of I don't want to say performance, but I can't find a better word. So for one side, is showing that Iran got allies, and the other side, I will test for how far the will of the Russians in order to defend Iran can get.
If the president is weighing a strike, Enrique, what would be the strategic objective and what would success look like?
If they want to show a higher level of deterrence in here, probably going to be air bases or some sort of nuke facilities or something like that. Taking for sure that there is no human beings in compromise in that situation. If they want to go further, we know for sure that they can kill specific targets. And when I say killing specific targets, I mean by some notorious people in Iran. I don't think that Khamenei is going to be in that list, only that first list. I don't know if they got intelligence enough to locate or to try to know where Khamenei is, but I'm for sure that, and as I said, has been proved before, that if you want to keep, you can. So let's see what, because we're talking about an agreement that got some days ahead to being reached. So let's see what the pressure is gonna be. But on a first strike, as I said, I think air bases and some kind of nuke facilities trying to avoid any human casualty.
But if a strike were limited and targeted, how likely is escalation beyond initial intentions?
That's hard to say, but remember that when during the 12-day war against Israel, any threat coming from Iran was stopped. So I don't think Iran is in a situation or in a capability of deployed counterattack in the same measure that the counterattack can come from the U.S. or from Israel. We can't forget that Israel is a very main character in this theater, and the United States are not going to strike alone. Maybe there's not going to be any Israel force in the strike itself, but Israeli intelligence is going to be determinant for this situation. So Iran has to put a lot of care and a lot of consideration in weighting their own power and their own forces in order to counterattack.
Okay, Enrique, my last question to you. There is speculation that domestic political pressures, including legal setbacks and scandals, could influence decision-making. Historically, how cautious should we be about drawing that link?
That is new, isn't it? I mean, yesterday, Donald Trump got a very hard backslash from the Supreme Court, and probably, and I'm saying probably, just probably, this situation, in order to this is not restore freedom. Some sort is restore freedom, but weeks ago we were talking about protesters on the streets of Iran. That's suddenly because Iranian powered decision. They were blackout, and we did since then. So we haven't noticed anything from protesters or repression or whatever in Iran. So here the situation is, Donald Trump got a very tough situation in Minnesota, and which put him in a place in which no leader of any democracy want to be placed, which is fighting against freedom of expression and freedom of speech. 2 people killed, and I think in some sort of way we can't avoid the thought of this is some sort of compensation, trying to put a sense of freedom and liberty in other places in the world after that, after whatever happened in Minnesota. So reality is not univariant; it's multivariant, and probably though the memories of Minnesota are applying in this deployment.
Enrique, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me again.
US military forces said on Friday that they struck a vessel in the Eastern Pacific, killing 3 men in the latest such incident in recent months. Footage released by the US Southern Command showed the vessel coming under attack. The Trump administration has highlighted its success against vessels suspected of being involved in drug trafficking in the region. The military said the vessel was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. India on Friday signed a declaration to join Pax Silica, the US-led initiative to secure AI and semiconductor supply chains, at the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. The move aims to reduce reliance on rivals like China and strengthen cooperation with allied partners. US and Indian officials attended the signing. The summit also saw over $200 billion pledged for AI projects in India, with major investments from Reliance Industries and Tata Group. At the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urged that AI should benefit everyone and called for evidence-based understanding rather than fear. French President Emmanuel Macron said India and France will work together to shape a responsible and innovative AI future.
By those who combine innovation and responsibility.
And now we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Georgian security forces say they've foiled an alleged plot to acquire and move radioactive material out of the country, arresting 2 foreign nationals in a counterintelligence operation. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashvili has more from Tbilisi.
The State Security Service of Georgia says 2 foreign nationals have been arrested in Kutaisi for attempting to illegally purchase nuclear material, uranium and radioactive substance, cesium-137. According to the agency, the suspects were planning to buy the materials for $3 million and transport them to another country. The arrests were carried out by officers from the State Security Service, Counterintelligence and Special Operations Department after processing operational information. Authorities say that the suspects had been traveling to Georgia frequently in recent weeks. They were reportedly trying to create favorable conditions to purchase and move the nuclear and radioactive substances. The State Security Service warned that uranium and cesium-137 can be used for serious criminal acts, including terrorist purposes. Notably, it's not the first such case. Last year, in Batumi, 2 people were detained for handling and attempting to sell $3 million worth of uranium, which could have been used to make a deadly bomb. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A-News.
Uzbekistan has strengthened its strategic partnership with the United States during President Shavkat Mirziyoyev's visit to Washington, signing a $1 billion critical minerals agreement and advancing broader trade and investment cooperation.
Uzbekistan and US-based Traxys have signed a $1 billion agreement on the extraction and supply of critical minerals, one of the key outcomes of President Shavkat Mirziyoyev's walking visit to Washington. The project oversees cooperation in the development of tungsten, molybdenum and black shale deposits, with projected production capacity of 150 tons per year. The agreement builds on earlier memorandums in the field of rare earths and strategic resources. Traxys confirmed plans to open a representative office in Tashkent as part of expanding long-term cooperation. The minerals deal was signed alongside a broader package of agreements covering energy, agriculture, infrastructure and financial market development. Bilateral trade between Uzbekistan and the United States has exceeded $1 billion, with around 340 American companies operating in the country. During meetings with the U.S. Commerce Secretary, trade representative and the leadership of Exim Bank and the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, the sides discussed advancing a 3-year $35 billion economic cooperation program and launching a joint investment platform to support priority projects. Uzbekistan's accession to the World Trade Organization was also addressed, with Washington expressing continued engagement on the process. As part of the visit, President Mirziyoyev also participated in the inaugural Peace Council meeting in Washington, where he expressed Uzbekistan's readiness to contribute to reconstruction efforts in Gaza, including housing, schools, and medical facilities. It is Sivil Rajapur reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan A News.
A new freight corridor linking China with Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan has launched its first cargo train, marking another step in regional connectivity and economic integration. The route is expected to strengthen trade flows across Central Asia and reduce reliance on traditional northern transit paths. We examine the geopolitical and economic implications. Let's bring in our guest, Turul Keskin, Professor at China Global Strategic Research Institute from Almaty, Kazakhstan. Professor Turul, welcome to the program.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Now, does this strengthen...
Pleasure having me.
Thank you for joining us once again. Does this strengthen Central Asia's autonomy in trade logistics by reducing dependence on northern or western transit routes?
Yeah, I think this is part of it. This new freight corridor linking China to Tajikistan via Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan may look like a small project and logical experiment, but just 8 containers, 3,500 kilometers and 18 to 20 days. But geopolitically, it signals something much bigger. We are witnessing in this context the gradual consolidation of the China-centered transport network in Central Asia. This is not just a trade, it is a restructuring of the Eurasian geography, from my perspective. The first pilot freight train departed from, I think, Lanzhou in Western China and is heading to Dushanbe, Tajikistan. It operates under the joint Uzbek-Chinese venture called UTK, International Logistic. This builds upon 2023 China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan multimodal corridor, and in 2025 formal establishment of the UTK and the broader China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway project, somehow undermining the northern route actually. So this is not isolated, it is a multi-layer integration actually. But China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway, the key background project here is the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway. And this railway is designed to shorten the distance transit between China and Europe. Second, bypass the northern routes, heavily dependent on Russia. Third, turn Central Asia into major land bridge actually. And in December 2025, almost 4.7 billion financing agreement was signed, and China is expected to provide more than half through long-term loans. This means infrastructure, finance, logistics are now integrated, but so is politics and society.
And Professor, how does this corridor intersect with China's broader Belt and Road ambitions in the region?
I mean, if you remember, President Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road Initiative in Kazakhstan in 2013, just 1 year after he came to power. Central Asia is one of the most important components, especially Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan especially, and Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, part of this project actually, BRI. For China, this corridor is about strategic redundancy, diversifying trade routes, reducing the vulnerability to geopolitical tensions between United States, China, and Russia, and expanding westward connectivity actually. And it strengthens China's Western development strategy and its broader Eurasian vision. This will help the development in Central Asian countries actually, in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. For example, in Uzbekistan, Uzbekistan becomes a logistic anchor of the Central Asia. Transit revenues, supply chain hubs, and diplomatic leverage increase, as we see in Washington yesterday, actually. Same as Kazakhstan. Tashkent is positioning itself as a region's connector state. So is Kazakhstan. For Kyrgyzstan, this is an economic survival through the infrastructure. Transit corridors means jobs, investment, railway modernization, but also debt, exposure and strategic dependence.
Professor Tuğrul, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your analysis.
Thank you very much.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for watching.